afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Virtual Storytime from the Newark Public Library. As always, we are recording this live story stream on land that rightfully belongs to the Lenape Indians, and if you are tuning in from anywhere in our fair city of Newark, New Jersey, it's likely that you are also tuning in from land that rightfully belongs to the Lenape Indians. I am your host, Mix Alley. That's Mix, just like mixing bowl, not to be confused with Mr., Ms., Mrs., or Miss, because, as you can see very well for yourselves, however many of you there are tuning in right now from your own homes. I am not a boy, nor am I a girl. I am a non-binary unicorn. And my storytelling companion is a boy unicorn. Please welcome back to Virtual Storytime, the one, the only. It's Jonathan Van Unicorn! Hello! Good afternoon! Happy Friday! Oh, what a delight to be here today! I just love Virtual Storytime so much. You are all looking fierce out there, and I'm proud of every single one of you. Jonathan, that is such a wonderful affirmative message for everyone to hear. Well, you know, Mix Alley, I've been thinking about it, and I don't know if every fabulous person out there understands exactly how fabulous they are. So it's my job to say, you, yes you are a fabulous individual doing a great job. Jonathan, I think a lot of people are very encouraged to hear that right now. Yes, I think so too. I am entirely confident in my notion that people need to hear that message. Well, that is great for you to be passing that message on. Jonathan, it's an exciting day, and you know, it's a day that's making me a little bit sad, but mostly really happy. Oh, Mix Alley, what is making you sad about it? Well, today we are going to read the final chapter of Peter Pan, which is the chapter book we've been reading for the past couple of weeks. And you know, that has always been one of my very favorite books, so I have loved reading it to everyone, but I'm a little bit sad to see it end. That makes a lot of sense to me, Mix Alley, but why, pray tell, is it also a happy day? Well, I'll tell you, Jonathan, it is also a happy occasion, this completion of Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, because so far on Virtual Storytime, we have mostly read pretty old books. You know what? It's true, Mix Alley. I mean, not old in unicorn years, to be sure. I myself have been around for more centuries than I can politely reveal. But Mix Alley, yes, we've read Peter Pan, we've read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, we've read a number of stories that were written very long ago. It's true, Jonathan, and you know what? A lot of those stories are really good stories, and they are worth hearing over and over again. But in more recent years, you know, more recently than within the past 100 years, authors all over the world with all kinds of different identities and backgrounds and stories and experiences have been writing really interesting stories of their own. Oh, it's true! Yeah! And so even though I am a little bit sad to be finishing reading the story of Peter Pan with everyone watching, I'm mostly happy that starting this Monday at 2 p.m., when we'll be reading a new chapter book, we're going to be able to read something a little more recent, and I think that a lot of the people who watch Virtual Storytime are going to see themselves in that story in a way that they might or might not see themselves in stories like The Wizard of Oz and Peter Pan. Oh, McSally, you know what? One of the things I love about you is that I can always count on you to look on the bright side. It's true, Jonathan. That is one of the unicorn traditions that I have stuck to, even as, much to your occasional disapproval, I have chosen to live among humans. It's true, you know, it's moments like these, McSally, that I think maybe, possibly, you just might be okay. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that vote of confidence. I always appreciate having your approval and your support. Oh yes, I mean everyone does, and just for the record, I support everyone. I think you're all crushing it. That's such a great thing for you to tell everyone, Jonathan. All right, now, are you ready to hear the final chapter of the story of Peter Pan? Almost, McSally, but first, let's do one of our anti-anxiety actions. Jonathan, I think that's a great idea. Can you remind everyone what the actions are that we've already learned that you can use to combat anxiety or worry or fear when they come up for you? Oh, certainly. So here's how it goes. Anxiety makes you feel powerless, even if you actually have a lot of power. So these actions that McSally and I have been doing are a way to remember how much power you have, how brave you can be, how capable you are of getting through whatever the day puts in front of you in order for you to thrive and for you to give back to others and make the world better. Beautifully put, Jonathan. Okay, well, which of our actions would you recommend everyone take part in now in order to be able to really enjoy the last chapter of Peter Pan? Because we all know it is really hard to enjoy a story or anything else if you're feeling anxious. It really is. So I think we should take some nice deep breaths, and I'm going to count them off. We're going to do 5, and I'm going to model the first one. All right, Jonathan, I think I'm ready. Let's go. All right, and if you feel inclined, why don't you put your hand on your tummy? McSally's doing it right now, and you can really feel your breath fill your body and remember how safe in your body you really are. That's a great idea, Jonathan. All right, take it away. All right, here's breath number 1. We're going to take a big breath in. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds. And then we will let it out. And if you're putting your hand on your tummy like McSally is right now, you can really feel that breath fill your whole body and then be released back into the world. Let's do 4 more, and what we'll do is we'll count to 4 every time we breathe in, every time we breathe out, and every time in between that we're holding our breath. Okay, let's go. Here's our second breath. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. And hold that breath. 2, 3, 4. And release it. 2, 3, 4. Beautiful job. Here's breath number 3 out of 5. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And release. 2, 3, 4. Fourth breath, second to last out of 5. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold for 2, 3, 4. And breathe out for 2, 3, 4. Last one. Make it really good. Make it really juicy. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. And breathe out. 2, 3, 4. Excellent job, everyone! Oh my goodness, McSally, I don't know about you, but I feel so much braver and more ready to face whatever comes my way now. I'm so glad, Jonathan, and I'm especially glad that what is going to face us right now is just another great story. Oh yes, I'll go off and listen to the story. I'll get comfortable, and you all should do the same thing. Get very cozy to listen to a story. But after we listen to this last chapter of Peter Pan, I'll be back to join McSally for a unicorn. Excuse me. For a unicorn dance party. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Oh dear, I might have the hiccups right in the middle of virtual story time. That is so inconvenient. I hear that sometimes holding your breath can help you get the hiccups away. I don't know if it really works, but either way it gets rid of anxiety. So either my hiccups will go away or I won't be so worried about them. All right, here's the final chapter of Peter Pan. When we left off, Peter and Wendy, well, not Peter. Peter had been up to some mischief, but Wendy, John, and Michael had returned to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Darling. But now we have to find out how Mr. and Mrs. Darling react when they realize that not only are their own children back, the lost boys have returned with Wendy, John, and Michael, so they have all these new children. And additionally, Peter Pan still has some unresolved bad feelings about Wendy going back to her family in London. So we'll find out how that all shakes out in chapter 12, When Wendy Grew Up. I hope you want to know what became of the other lost boys. They were waiting below the window to give Wendy time to explain about them, and when they had counted 500, they went up. They went up by the stair instead of flying because they thought this would make a better impression. They stood in a row in front of Mr. Darling with their hats off and wishing they were not wearing pirate clothes. They said nothing, but their eyes asked, "Will you have us?" They ought to have looked at Mr. Darling also, but they forgot about him. Of course, Mrs. Darling said at once that she would have them, but Mr. Darling was curiously depressed and said that he thought 6 a rather large number. "I must say," he said to Wendy, "you don't do things by halves." A grudging remark which the twins thought was pointed at them. The first twin was the proud one, and he said, flushing, "Do you think we should be too much of a handful, sir? Because if so, we can go away." "Father!" Wendy cried, shocked. But still the cloud was on him. He knew he was behaving unworthily, but he could not help it. He probably could have helped it. He was a grown-up man, but, we'll let that slide for the sake of the story. "We could lie doubled up," said Nibs. "I always cut their hair myself," said Wendy. "George!" Mrs. Darling exclaimed, pained to see her dear one showing himself in such an unfavorable light. Then Mr. Darling burst into tears, and the truth came out. He was as glad to have the lost boys as Mrs. Darling was, but he thought they should have asked his consent as well as hers, instead of treating him as a cipher in his own house. "I don't think he is a cipher," cried Toodles instantly. "Do you think he is a cipher, Curly?" "No, I don't. Do you think he is a cipher, Slightly?" "Rather not. twin. What do you think?" It turned out that not one of them thought him a cipher, and he was absurdly gratified and said he would find space for them in the drawing room if they fit. "We'll fit, sir," they assured him. "Then follow the leader," he said gaily. "Mind you, I am not sure that we have a drawing room, but we pretend we have, and it's all the same. Hoopla!" He went off dancing through the house, and they all cried, "Hoopla!" and danced after him, searching for the drawing room. And I forget whether they found it, but at any rate, they found corners, and they all fit in. As for Peter Pan, he saw Wendy once again before he flew away. Remember, Peter was angry with Wendy for leaving Neverland, but he didn't want to go with her back to live with Mr. and Mrs. Darling either. He did not exactly come to the window, but he brushed against it in passing, so that she could open it if she liked and call to him. And that was what she did. "Hello, Wendy." "Goodbye," he said. "Oh dear, Peter, are you going away?" "Yes." "You don't feel, Peter," she said falteringly, "that you would like to say anything to my parents about a very sweet subject?" "No." "About me, Peter?" "No." Mrs. Darling came to the window, for at present she was keeping a sharp eye on Wendy. Oh, Mrs. Darling was afraid that Wendy would disappear again, and she doesn't want that. She told Peter that she had adopted all the other lost boys and would like to adopt him also. "Would you send me to school?" he inquired craftily. "Yes." "And then to an office?" "Yes, I suppose so." "Soon I should be a man." "Very soon." "I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things," he told her passionately. "I don't want to be a man. Oh, Wendy's mother, if I was to wake up and feel that there was a beard." "Peter," said Wendy the comforter, "I should love you in a beard." And Mrs. Darling stretched out her arms to him, but he repulsed her. "Keep back, lady. No one is going to catch me and make me a man." "But where are you going to live?" "With Tinkerbell in the house we built for Wendy. The fairies are to put it high up among the treetops where they sleep at nights." "How lovely!" cried Wendy, so longingly that Mrs. Darling tightened her grip on her daughter. "I thought all the fairies were dead," Mrs. Darling said. "There are always a lot of young ones," explained Wendy, who was now quite an authority on fairies, "because you see, when a new baby laughs for the first time, a new fairy is born. And as there are always new babies, there are always new fairies. They live in nests on the tops of trees, and the mauve ones are boys, and the white ones are girls, and the blue ones are just little sillies who are not sure what they are." "I shall have such fun," said Peter, with one eye on Wendy. "It will be rather lonely in the evening," she said, sitting by the fire. "I shall have Tinkerbell." "Oh, Peter." "Well," said Peter, "then come back with me to the little house." "May I, Mummy?" "Certainly not," said Mrs. Darling. "I have got you home again, and I intend to keep you." "But he does so need a mother." "So do you, my love." Wendy has been playing mother for all of these lost boys and for Peter Pan, but she's still a child herself, and she does need a mother. "Oh, all right," Peter said, as if he had asked her from politeness merely. But Mrs. Darling saw his mouth twitch. she made this handsome offer to let Wendy go to him for a week every year and do his spring cleaning. Wendy would have preferred a more permanent arrangement, and it seemed to her that spring would be long in coming. But this promise sent Peter away quite gay again. Peter had no sense of time, as I have told you, and was so full of adventures that all I have told you about him is only a halfpenny worth of them. I suppose it was because Wendy knew this, that her last words to him were these rather plaintive ones. "You won't forget me, Peter, will you, when spring cleaning time comes?" Of course, Peter promised not to forget, and he flew away. He took Mrs. Darling's kiss with him. The kiss that had been for no one else, Peter took quite easily. Funny, but she seemed satisfied. Of course, all the boys went to school, and most of them got into Class 3, but Slightly was put first into Class 4 and then into Class 5. Class 1 is the top class. Before they had attended school a week, they saw what goats they had been not to remain on the island. But it was too late now, and soon they settled down to being as ordinary as you or me or Jenkins Minor. It is sad to have to say that the power to fly gradually left them. At first, Nana tied their feet to the bedpost so that they should not fly away in the night. But by and by, they ceased to tug at their bonds in bed and found that they hurt themselves when they let go of the bus to try to fly. In time, they could not even fly after the bus. Want of practice, they called it, but what it really meant was that they no longer believed they could fly. Michael believed longer than the other boys, though they jeered at him, so he was with Wendy when Peter came for her at the end of the year. She flew away with Peter for spring cleaning in the frock she had woven from leaves and berries in Neverland, and her one fear was that he might notice how short it had become, because Wendy had been growing. But he never noticed. He had so much to say about himself. She had looked forward to thrilling talks with him about old times, but his new adventures had crowded the old ones from his mind. "Who is Captain Hook?" he asked with interest when she spoke of the archenemy. "Don't you remember?" she asked, amazed, "how you killed him and saved all our lives?" "I forget pirates after I kill them," Peter replied carelessly. When she expressed a doubtful hope that Tinkerbell would be glad to see her, he said, "Who is Tinkerbell?" "Oh, Peter," she said, shocked. But even when she reminded him who his fairy friend had been, he could not remember. "There are such a lot of fairies," he said. Wendy was pained, too, to find that the past year was but as yesterday to Peter. It had seemed such a long year of waiting to her. But he was exactly as fascinating as ever, and they had a lovely spring cleaning in the little house on the treetops. The next year, he did not come for her. She waited in a new frock, because the old one simply would not meet, but he never came. "Perhaps he is ill," Michael said. "You know he is never ill." Michael came closer to her and whispered with a shiver, "Perhaps there is no such person as Peter Pan, Wendy." And then Wendy would have cried if Michael had not been crying. They're both really worried that they imagined Peter Pan, even though they were with him in Neverland for such a long time. Peter came next spring cleaning, and the strange thing was that he never even knew he had missed a year. That was the last time the girl Wendy ever saw him. For a little longer, she tried, for his sake, not to have growing pains, and she felt she was untrue to him when she got a prize for general knowledge. That's an important prize you can get at school. But the years came and went without bringing the careless boy. When they met again, Wendy had grown up. She was a married woman. You need not be sorry for her. She was one of the kind that likes to grow up. In the end, she grew up of her own free will a day quicker than the other girls. You know, that makes sense to me, because through this whole story, Wendy loved being a mother to Peter and her brothers and the Lost Boys. She always wanted to play at being a grown-up, so it makes sense that she liked being a real one. All the boys were grown up by this time, so it is scarcely worthwhile saying anything more about them. You may see the twins and Nibs and Curly any day going to an office. And and each carrying a little bag and an umbrella. Michael is an engine driver. Slightly married a lady of title, and so he became a lord. You see that judge in a wig coming out at the iron door? That used to be Toodles, the bearded man who doesn't know any story to tell his children was John. Wendy was married in white with a pink sash. It is strange to think that Peter did not alight in the church and forbid the vows. Years rolled on again, and Wendy had her own daughter. This ought not to be written in ink, but in a golden splash. She was called Jane, and always she had an odd, inquiring look. That inquiring is another way of saying curious. As if from the moment that she arrived on the mainland, she wanted to ask questions. When she was old enough to ask them, they were mostly about Peter Pan. She loved to hear of Peter, and Wendy told all she could remember in the very nursery from which the famous flight had taken place. It was Jane's nursery now, for her father had bought it at the 3%. Mrs. Darling was now gone. There were only 2 beds in the nursery now, Jane's and her nurse's. Once a week, Jane's nurse had her evening off. And then it was Wendy's turn to put Jane to bed. And that was the time for stories. It was Jane's invention to raise the sheet over her mother's head and her own, thus making a tent. And in the awful darkness she would whisper, "What do we see now?" "I don't know if I see anything tonight," says Wendy. "Yes, you do," said Jane. "You see when you were a little girl." Do you like hearing your parents or your caregivers, whoever takes care of you, do you like hearing stories about them when they were little? Yeah, well, Jane did too, and she loved hearing about Wendy when Wendy was a little girl. "That is a long time ago, sweetheart," says Wendy. "Ah me, how time flies." "Does it fly?" asked the artful child, "the way you flew when you were a little girl?" "The way I flew? Do you know, Jane, I sometimes wonder whether I really did fly." "Yes, you did." "The dear old days when I could fly." "Why can't you fly now, Mother?" "Because I am grown up, dearest. When people grow up, they forget the way." "Why do they forget the way?" "Because they are no longer gay and innocent and heartless. It is only the gay and innocent and heartless who can fly." You know, I used to really wonder why being heartless was part of being able to fly, because it's not good to be heartless usually, right? I think that what J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan, is saying there is that being a little bit heartless, a little bit selfish, is what enabled Wendy to fly away to Neverland, even though she knew it would really hurt her mother's feelings. And when you grow up and start to care about other people, it's a little bit harder to fly away and leave those people behind, because caring about other people is a big part of growing up. And then one night came the tragedy. It was the spring of the year, and the story of Neverland had been told. Wendy was sitting on the floor, very close to the fire so as to see to darn, for there was no other light coming from the nursery. And while she sat darning, she heard a crow. Arr, 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 arr! That's the sound Peter Pan makes. Then the window blew open as of old, and Peter dropped on the floor. He was exactly the same as ever, and Wendy saw at once that he still had all his first teeth. He was a little boy, and she was grown up. She huddled by the fire, not daring to move. Helpless and guilty. A big woman. "Hello, Wendy," Peter said, not noticing any difference, for he was thinking chiefly of himself. And in the dim light, her white dress might have been the nightgown in which he had seen her first. "Hello, Peter," she replied faintly, squeezing herself as small as possible. Something inside her was crying, "Woman, woman, let go of me." "Hello, where is John?" Peter asked, suddenly missing the third bed. "John does not live here now," Wendy gasped. "Is Michael asleep?" he asked, with a careless glance at Jane. Oh, he thought Jane was Michael because she was so small and Michael was the youngest brother. "Yes," Wendy answered, and now she felt that she was untrue to Jane as well as to Peter. "But that is not Michael," she said quickly, lest a judgment should fall on her. Peter looked. "Hello. Is it a new one?" "Yes." "Boy or girl?" "Girl." Now surely he would understand. But not a bit of it. "Peter," Wendy said, faltering, "are you expecting me to fly away with you?" "Of course," he said. "That is why I have come." He added a little sternly, "Have you forgotten that it is spring cleaning time?" She knew it was useless to say that he had let many years of spring cleaning pass. "I can't come," Wendy said, apologetically. "I have forgotten how to fly." "I'll soon teach you again." "Oh, Peter, don't waste fairy dust on me." She had risen, and now, at last, a fear assailed him. "What is it?" he cried, shrinking away. "I will turn up the light," she said, "and then you can see for yourself." For almost the only time in his life that I know of, Peter was afraid. "Don't turn up the light!" he cried. She let her hands play in the hair of the tragic boy. She was not a little girl heartbroken. She was a grown woman smiling at it all. But they were wet smiles. That means that Wendy isn't as sad as she used to be, that Peter Pan forgot about her for so many years. But she was also crying, even still. The things that matter to us when we're really young keep mattering to us as we grow up, even if it's in a different way. Then she turned up the light, and Peter saw. He gave a cry of pain, and when the tall, beautiful creature stooped to lift him in her arms, he drew back sharply. "What is it?" he cried again. She had to tell him. "I am old now, Peter. I am ever so much more than 20. I grew up long ago." "You promised me you wouldn't!" "I couldn't help it. I am a married woman now, Peter." "No, you're not!" "Yes, and the little girl in the bed is my baby." "No, she's not!" But Peter supposed she was. He sat down on the floor and sobbed, and Wendy did not know how to comfort him, though she could have done it so easily once. She was only a woman now, and she ran out of the room to try to think. Peter continued to cry, and soon his sobs woke Jane up. She sat up in bed, and she was interested at once. "Boy," she said, "why are you crying?" Peter rose and bowed to Jane, and she bowed to him from the bed. "Hello," he said. "Hello," said Wendy's daughter Jane. "My name is Peter Pan," he told her. "Yes, I know." "I came back for my mother Wendy," he explained, "to take her to the Neverland." "Yes, I know," Jane said. "I have been waiting for you." When Wendy returned diffidently, she found Peter sitting on a bedpost crowing gloriously, "Arr, arr, arr, arr!" while Jane, in her nightie, was flying around the room in solemn ecstasy. "She is my mother now," Peter explained, and Jane descended and stood by his side with the look on her face that he liked to see on ladies when they gazed at him. "He does so need a mother," Jane said to Wendy. "Yes, I know," said Wendy, rather forlornly. "No one knows it as well as I." "Goodbye," said Peter to Wendy, and he rose in the air, and the shameless Jane rose with him. It was already her easiest way of moving about. Wendy rushed to the window. "No, no!" she cried. "It is just for spring cleaning time," Jane said. "He always wants me to do his spring cleaning." "If only I could go with you," Wendy sighed. "You see, you can't fly," said Jane. Of course, in the end, Wendy let Peter and Jane fly away together. Our last glimpse of her shows her at the window, watching them receding into the sky until they were as small as stars. As you look at Wendy, you may see her hair becoming white and her figure little again, for all this happened long ago. Jane is now a common grown-up with a daughter called Margaret, and every spring cleaning time, except when he forgets, Peter comes for Margaret and takes her to the Neverland, where she tells him stories about himself, to which he listens eagerly. When Margaret grows up, she will have a daughter, who will be Peter's mother in turn, and so it will go on, so long as children are gay and innocent and heartless. That's the end. It's a really interesting ending because I feel happy for Jane and that she gets to go to Neverland just like Wendy did, but I feel sad for Wendy that she can't go back again. And I also feel a little bit sad for Peter that he's never going to grow up and learn how to really care for other people. If you think about this book, do you think that it's better to grow up like Wendy did, and like her daughter Jane is going to someday, or to never grow up like Peter does? We'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. It has been such a joy to read Peter Pan and so many other books with all of you during virtual story time, and thank you so much for joining us. You can catch me and Jonathan Van Unicorn every Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. and again at 2 p.m. for more stories. You can also come and listen to some virtual bedtime stories with us at 7 p.m. on Monday evenings, and we really hope that we'll see you again soon. In the meantime, it's time to close out this wonderful week of storytelling with a unicorn dance party. So get on your feet, get ready to dance with us, and get excited for two things. One, for having a fantastic weekend, and two, for joining us on Monday for a brand new chapter book that we'll be starting. Thanks again for joining us. Right. Music is taking a little bit to load. That's been a real issue this week, and I do not know why. In Unicorn Land, everything always loads right away, or so Jonathan tells me. Nick Sally! Yes, Jonathan? I loved the end of that story, but where is our music for our unicorn dance party? You know what, Jonathan? I am not sure it's going to load. So, do you think you could sing a song for everyone to dance to? Oh, I think I can. What's a good song? Oh, I know one. All right, why don't you sing it, and I can dance and everyone else can too. All right, here we go. Come along with us to our little corner of the world and dream a little dream in our little corner of the world. We'll soon forget that there's any other place. Tonight, my loves, we'll share a sweet embrace. And if you care to stay in our little corner of the world, we can hide away, then go out and make a better world. We always knew that we'd find someone like you, just like you. So welcome to our little corner of the world. Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was beautiful. And all of you are beautiful too. We'll see you right back here on Monday.